So remember John Krasinski, that guy you loved from The Office? Well, since he's become a sort of action star, starring in Michael Bay films and now being the star of Jack Ryan, he has turned into a full CIA stooge. And he's gone on to really promote CIA propaganda while he's been promoting season 2 of the show, which is set in Venezuela, where the Venezuelans, I think, are being bankrolled by the Russian government, given weapons, and I think even trying to bring nukes into Venezuela. If you want to see a good example of how the CIA and just the West in general use entertainment to push propaganda, this is a very good one. I'm sure they're trying to be topical, but making Venezuela the big bad guys in Jack Ryan and the Russians just, you know, screams of CIA propaganda. And I'm going to get into his comments. So basically, a Twitter user has made a little thread of all his comments on video. So I'm hopefully going to show you them. I don't know if YouTube will, you know, remove my video or do something with copyright. So if that does happen, I will come back and just read his comments. But hopefully it'll be all fine and we can just watch them. And then we can dissect them afterwards. So Don't Laugh at Dewey Bleach has put them all together. So go follow her if you want to, you know, give her some credit for this. So I'm just going to show them all and read the tweets before I show you the videos. So the first one is, here's a clip of a Jack Ryan Q&A shown in the video. In it, John Krasinski says he comes from a huge military family and wanted to do a show where he could talk to the CIA about how they would like the characters to be perceived.
The main reason why I said yes to doing this role, not only is it a huge opportunity for me, obviously, and I love the character, but I actually come from a huge military family. So I have 11 cousins, aunts, and uncles that have served or are currently serving. So for me, it was one of those things where if I could do a show that could really interface more with the military and especially the intelligence community, I would love to do that. So the first question I asked is if I could go down to Langley and really interface with Langley and the agency and really talk to them about how they would like their character to be perceived as well. So we did a lot of conversations about really making Jack Ryan, as much as it is fun and all that stuff, to actually be as relevant and specific as possible. So we have so many different consultants and people who are always checking in with us, and we're checking in with them. So obviously it's not perfect representation of what's out there, but we really wanted to take a chance, and we were talking to some people back there that said it's actually very real for them too, so we got that stamp of approval.
So isn't that nice? John Krasinski went to the CIA headquarters and asked them, how would you like to be perceived in my TV show about the CIA really undermining the Venezuelan government and fighting with the Russians? How would you like to be perceived? How would, you know, your organisation, which has been instrumental in causing misery across the globe, how would you like me to portray them? So let's get into the next video. So she tweets, this Hollywood bootlicker has got the script down. He and his State Department infomercial of a show are here to reassure us how diverse and apolitical and idealistic the CIA is. So take a look at this clip.
Certainly being at the building is something that I've always wanted to do. Obviously, I knew that they had dedicated their lives to the idea of the agency, but when you actually meet them, these people are a much more diverse group than you would imagine, a much more apolitical group than you would imagine, which is really refreshing. I think the idea of caring about the country in a bigger, more idealistic way rather than a political way. Their job is that they're always trying to do the right thing. There are things that they may feel they don't want to do or feel is not moral to them, so they will not do that certain aspect of the mission. There's always a different way to find out the information you're trying to get. And I just, again, I was so relieved and sort of honored to be there among a group of people who are so dedicated to the rest of us.
So isn't that nice? The CIA are nice and diverse in their goal of spreading the US empire across the world. Shouldn't we be all so grateful for that? And of course, spreading the US empire across the world at the expense of the lives of millions of mainly brown people or non-white people is of course an apolitical goal. Now it is apolitical, I guess, if you're completely brainwashed by, you know, the American patriotism that sweeps through America, because even people who say they are liberal, like John Krasinski, think the CIA is some sort of organisation for good. Now, does he actually believe this? He says he has a military family, so I'd say he does believe it. And if he was super against it, do you think he'd be comfortable in starring in a show which is essentially CIA propaganda? So it just shows how full of rubbish he is. And I would love someone to sit down with him and say, do you know all these problems with the CIA? Do you know everything they've done? And I'm going to get into that in the rest of the video. I'm going to talk about, you know, just some select things I want to point out with the CIA. But there is one more video to quickly watch, so let us take a look. So the tweet is, the CIA is something we should all not only cherish, but be saying thank you for every single day. Impossible to listen to this guy for 5 seconds without snort laughing, so here is John Krasinski again.
The coolest thing ever for me, I mean, I totally nerded out when we got to the CIA. I think I probably embarrassed myself, and I'm sure they have it on tape. So I owe them everything. I really do. The CIA is something that we should all not only cherish, but be saying thank you every single day.
So John Krasinski is a super nerd of the CIA. What did he nerd out about? The war crimes in Iraq, or undermining pretty much every single socialist leader in Latin America, helping America essentially occupy these countries in a lot of ways and just back these awful dictatorships, back their police, back these death squads to kill basically any leftist they find in Latin America. Think of all the death the CIA have caused just in their backyard in Latin America. Then think about Vietnam. 4 million Vietnamese died overall. Think of all the secret projects the CIA had there. These military groups going around Laos, Cambodia, going around Vietnam and killing without any oversight. That happened frequently. You only got to watch things like Ken Burns' Vietnam War documentary. Listen to people like John Kerry, who said even like in the infantry and things he was a part of, war crimes are pretty much standard procedure. What do you think the CIA were getting up to in Vietnam? And then you have things like the coup in Iran, and you basically have all these horrible things. So I'm going to get into some select examples, like I said, of why John Krasinski shouldn't be proud of the CIA, why we shouldn't be saying thank you to them every single day, and why you shouldn't nerd out when you're meeting the headquarters of one of the most evil organisations on Earth. So to start with, and just more relevant news, who remembers when Trump appointed Gina Haspel as the new CIA director, who has been, exposed as torturing a terror suspect by means of waterboarding and other controversial methods while she was running a secret black site in Thailand. Most of the documents are redacted, but she also destroyed most of the evidence. So that's the head of the CIA right now, someone who did that. So, John Krasinski, what do you think of Gina Haspel? That's one example. Let's get into some more. So do we even need to mention Guantanamo Bay? Do we need to mention the various black sites they've set up around the world in places like Egypt to torture alleged terror suspects? And let's remember, lots of people who go to Guantanamo Bay are picked up on really sketchy evidence and then sent to a place where you don't really have any representation, you can't really get out, you have no rights, because the problem with black sites, especially in Guantanamo Bay, it's on land that no one owns, so they say international law doesn't apply here, you don't have any human rights because this is actually part of Cuba, but the US bought it before Cuba's independence, so it technically belongs to no one, so we can do whatever we want in it. Think of all the innocent people who've been swept up into that. Think of all the things across the world that you've never heard about and you know is going on. Think of all these torture programs, and think of how prominent the torture programs were after 9/11. That is the people and organisation John Krasinski is saying you should be grateful for every single day of your life. And obviously post 9/11, civilians just happily allowed the government to take all their rights away and allowed the CIA to run rampant across the world, no checks and balances, doing whatever they wanted to catch these terrorists that had attacked America. So that is a massive problem. But did you know the CIA has also participated on human experiments of American citizens without their knowledge or permission? So Project MKUltra, also called the CIA Mind Control Program, is the code name given to a program of experiments on human subjects that were designed and undertaken by the US Central Intelligence Agency and which were at times illegal. Experiments on humans were intended to identify and develop drugs and procedures to be used in interrogations in order to weaken the individual and force confessions through mind control. The project was organised through the Office of Scientific Intelligence of the CIA and coordinated with the US Army Biological Warfare Laboratories. The operation was officially sanctioned in 1953, was reduced in scope in 64, further curtailed in 67, and recorded to be halted in 73. The program engaged in many illegal activities, including the use of US and Canadian citizens as unwitting test subjects, which led to controversy regarding its legitimacy. MKUltra used numerous methods to manipulate people's mental states and alter brain functions, including the administration of high doses of LSD and other chemicals, electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, as well as other forms of torture. The scope of Project MKUltra was broad, with research undertaken at 80 institutions, including colleges and universities, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. The CIA operated through these institutions using front organisations, although sometimes top officials at these institutions were aware of the CIA's involvement. Now, this wasn't just an American thing, they actually spread this around the globe, so In areas under American control in the early 1950s, in Europe and East Asia, mostly Japan, Germany and the Philippines, the CIA created secret detention centres so that the US could avoid criminal prosecution. The CIA captured people suspected of being enemy agents and other people it deemed expendable to undertake various types of torture and human experimentation on them. The prisoners were interrogated while being administered psychoactive drugs, electroshocked, and subjected to extremes of temperature, sensory isolation, and the like to develop a better understanding of how to destroy and control human minds. Does anyone think that sounds like total Nazi stuff? They're literally setting up prison camps to put in people they think are undesirables, or unworthy, or whatever, just people they decide are against the US and are criminals, so they can experiment on them in all these awful ways. And who do you think they would have targeted the most? Communists, leftists, agitators, people just going randomly missing in these countries? Where do you think sometimes they ended up? In the hands of the CIA to conduct this awful experimentation. That is the institution people like John Krasinski are defending, and it's obviously gross, isn't it? And it really leaves two options for John Krasinski. Either he's extremely dumb, he's super naive, and he doesn't know these things, and he just doesn't have the brain function to have any critical thinking and think about what he's doing, or he knows all these things, he's well aware of it, but he is selling out to star in this TV show. He is selling out for a paycheck. What do you think is more likely? Since he seems like quite a talented guy, and comes across, as a smart enough guy, I find it hard to believe he doesn't know any of this stuff. It's not hard. Does the CIA have a real positive image around the world? Is it just someone who hasn't really left America so they don't understand how awful the CIA are? I don't know, what the real deal is there, but, it's one of two options, and I'm leaning towards him completely being a sellout and just becoming a total stooge for the CIA. We all know how bad the CIA is. I don't need to really go into much detail. Please, if you've got some stories of the CIA you think are particularly shocking, please put them down in the comments, some of the worst stuff you've heard of. But it's just so broad, isn't it? It's just constant war crimes since it became the CIA. I'm not sure how bad the OSS was, that's the precursor to the CIA. But just constant war crimes, non-stop war crimes, the worst stuff you've ever heard. And that MKUltra thing alone, if that was the only bad thing it had ever done, isn't that bad enough to not say, we should be grateful for the CIA, they're so great and everything, and just think of all the stuff they are up to right now that no one knows about. Think of the stuff that sometimes gets leaked. Think of Edward Snowden. Are you grateful for that? Are you grateful for this massive surveillance state they've created in America? John Krasinski is totally embarrassing, and it's kind of sad because, I liked him in The Office, but since he's left The Office, he doesn't seem like a very good guy promoting the CIA. And before some Americans who might support the CIA see this video, I'm not saying MI6 or MI5 aren't as bad. I'm not saying the British Empire hasn't done just as bad things as the Americans. And obviously there are problems with a character like James Bond, as much as I have liked a couple of those movies. But I'm just talking about Jack Ryan in this instance, and I'm talking about someone who is so open to going around on his press tour and talking about how great the CIA are. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please like the video and maybe share to show everyone how bad John Krasinski is. Also, maybe subscribe to the channel. If you want to follow me on social media, follow me at The Cavernacle on Twitter and Instagram. Follow me at u/Tommy Cahill, just 1L, 1995 at Reddit. If you want to become a patron, just check out my Patreon in the description. And thanks to everyone who already has become a patron. If you want to check out my WordPress blog, that is just The Cavernacle WordPress, and that is in the description as well. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.